here we are with another moment hanging out with Dr. Doug. And I wanted to share what's been happening for me just by using some of what Dr. Doug has shared with me and really like bringing it into my own way about how am I meant to eat? What are the things that I'm meant to do? And how can I use raw foods to actually get the most benefit? So in March, I started doing 80% raw foods and just gradually taking things out. So by now, which is like June, so maybe 4 or 5 months later, I was able to do an ocean swim, and I don't practice ocean swimming. And I was able to get second in my age group and like the 10th female. And I was like, huh, like what has been happening in these races that I'm doing differently? And that's, I'm actually just eating like 6 bananas. And if I want some other fruit, but really having the energy and noticing like the digestion, like maybe we don't need to eat as much. And so today I wanted to bring him on to talk about why fasting, in that way, what raw foods and fasting and how they correlate and what they're doing scientifically in the body. And what's, continuing in my path about how stronger and faster I'm becoming by using these resources.
Cool. Thank you very much, Sarah. It's a treat. It's just a treat to spend some time with you. Um, I'm very, very proud of not your accomplishments, like that's you're proud of your accomplishments. I'm proud that you were willing to take on the challenge to better yourself. Like you're very mature as an athlete, you're very responsible. And it's nice to see that. For me, uh, I I commit to people and I say, look, I'll give you 100%, but give me 100% back. And I've never known you not to do that. You always give your all, and that's really quite fantastic and a pleasure to spend time with you. Thank you for having me on the broadcast, and it's fun to hear that it's not just for everybody else, that at least hopefully some of what I'm going to talk about will rub off on you. You'll take it personally. You're willing to take it on board and experiment. It's a it's an interesting, every athlete's got their own pressures, if you will. Uh, you have a schedule. You've got nationals. You've got Olympics. You've got things, and 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 others have tournaments or a long competitive season or whatever it might be, and we have to work within those confines a little bit. And it's usually one of the very first things that I ask an athlete when they start inquiring about working with me is, I need to know your upcoming competition schedule for at least the next year to 18 months before I start recommending that we implement any changes, because it could be the right time, it could be the perfect time, but it could be the wrong time. And in that case, we don't want to risk what you've been building for the last 12 or 18 months. So today's topic, as you say, is primarily about fasting, and why I think every single athlete and every single active person, each individual, not single like not married, but each individual person who wishes to do better in activity, the sport of their choice, if you will, uh, really would benefit from fasting. And I'm going to have to define what fasting is and how we utilize it and what I'm talking about, and then tie that in a little bit with the use of a raw food diet, because I'm 100% convinced that every athlete should be on a raw food diet. There's no exceptions there. And hopefully I made that clear last time around, but I'm going to reiterate that every athlete should be on a raw food diet. It's optimum performance. It's optimum in all 5 aspects of fitness, from muscular strength, muscular endurance, cardio, flexibility, and neurologic skills, most of all. And it allows for the maximum longevity of the career, like the longevity of your youthfulness, being able to participate, having the fun to participate in sport. When you're doing great, it is fun. So without reiterating that whole conversation about the negatives of cooked foods, we won't go there. Instead, we'll just kind of remind people that everybody knows already that fruits and vegetables are good for you, that in fact, fruits and vegetables are the most nutritious foods. And it doesn't mean they have the most of this, that, or the next nutrient. That's not what most nutritious means. Most nutritious means best fit. So if you're trying on a wetsuit, you don't want one that's too big and you don't want one that's too small. You want one that's just right. It's like Goldilocks nutrition. We don't want the maximum vitamin A available. That would kill you. And we don't want the minimum, because, in fact, that would kill you too. We want to have just the right amount of every nutrient known. And that is found in fruit and vegetables. Anything else other than whole, fresh, ripe, raw, organic fruits and vegetables has to, by definition, therefore, fall into second, or if you prefer, third place at best, or worse. And you have to ask yourself pretty aggressively as an athlete, why would I give myself third, fourth, fifth place, fifth degree food? Like, why would I want to nourish myself with something that might maybe only bring me up to fifth place? Like, that's really not what I'm looking for in sport. It's not what I'm looking to do for athletes. I'm looking to show them how they can be their best. And that's going to require some seriously good nutrition. Today, I want to talk fast. So I'll talk really fast as if I was from New York. It's really not a problem. Okay, so no, it's I want to talk about fasting, and it's interesting to me because I've been talking about fasting in athletes for 43 years, and up until fairly recently, not a whole lot of people listened. I have fasted athletes 25 and 30 years ago. There have been the rare individual few, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 every year. And from almost every sport. But at some point a few years ago, the idea of the concept of fast started taking hold just a little more. What do they call that? Got traction. And it got traction through a concept called juice fast. Now, if we take a moment of history and go back to the word, where did the word fast come from? Like many words, the word fast came from a nautical background, because when you tie one thing to another, the verb was called to make fast, or what eventually became in our modern English, to fasten. So you fasten one thing to another. And that's what fast was, where this word came from. So you make fast, right? You tie the boat to the dock. You make it fast. And essentially what that meant was that you could go into town, come back, and your boat would still be there, which is kind of, important. It didn't just float away. So essentially what it did was You tied it there, and then like we see when you tie up a horse or a dog or a person or whatever we tie up, a package, it keeps doing what it's doing, which is waiting for you to come back. And that's where this concept of fast started. Well, eventually the word took on some other meanings, and people started to use it to mean doing without. So the idea of fasting, when we think of it in biblical terms, there's references, there's many references to fasting in the Bible, but the kind of fast they're talking about was where you would do one thing and then you would keep doing it, whatever that one thing was. Somehow people took this and carried it through to the idea that they called juice fast, which is an odd twist on the term, because they're not doing without juice. Juice is the only thing they're having. So it's really not a juice fast. It's a juice only fast. Right? Like anyway, it's just sort of funny. And but when we go back in history to various world leaders that have fasted, spiritual leaders, religious leaders, um, political leaders, when we look at the various people over the centuries that have fasted, they did so for specific reasons. They did so for clarity. They did so for purity of mind. They did so uh, to regroup, and so they could then come back out and deal with the stresses of being a leader. Uh, and it's fascinating how when the mainstream caught this idea of juice fast, that none of that carried through. Now it's just drink juices and get on with your normal day. Which kind of defeats the purpose, because the purpose was, as we said, to regroup, to recover from the tempo of life and the pace of constantly being on the go, to energize yourself. And it's interesting, I find it's interesting, people started doing juice fasts and they said, well, I feel so much energy, I feel so much better, it must be the juices, which is not the case at all. When people go on juices, they juice specific foods. We know what they're juicing, right? They're juicing fruits and vegetables. They're not juicing toast. They're not juicing cheeseburgers. They're not juicing Cheerios. They're they're juicing fruits and vegetables, and they're having juice to the exclusion of everything else, all of those other things that weren't particularly health builders in the first place. I'm not coming out against juice, but there is a problem with juice, and that is that it's lost all of its fiber. And fiber fiber helps to regulate nutrient uptake. Without fiber, nutrient uptake takes several shifts in different direction. None of them are better than nutrient with fiber. So I find it kind of, most people do a juice fast as some kind of a health kick, but then they take out the fiber, which, you can look at almost any breakfast cereal commercial and tell you with added fiber, because we know fiber is good for us. And most doctors are telling people to eat more fiber. So it's sort of funny. Oh, now they're on this juice fast. They're not getting any fiber. They're thumbing their at the idea that fiber is really good for us. Meanwhile, nutrition was whole foods are really the best. Eat more whole foods, just as is, just the way you find them. And now we're taking whole foods and refining out all the fiber and thinking that that's even better than whole foods. And it's not better than whole foods. So I think the people got well. I watch people get well. I can explain that they get well because they stopped doing the things that were making them sick. They weren't juicing ice cream. They just weren't. So, ooh, ice cream juice might be good. No, I'm only kidding. So it's already fiberless. So we uh, we got into this thing, and then the word fasting started to come around, and there were some famous people went on long juice fasts, and so the idea of this thing between 2000 and 2010, it started to proliferate a bit, and then people said, we, we have. I think it's important, even though there's barely time to step back anyway and say, why are people trying all this stuff? And it's because the standard American diet can't work, doesn't work, won't work, never worked, will not work in the future. There's no way to beat that game of eating what you want on a standard Western or standard American diet and maintaining your health or your weight. Like something's going to give way. As much as you want, you're going to gain weight. If you eat so little that you don't gain weight, you're going to be binging and going mentally crazy about food. You're going to go off the deep end. If you eat somewhere in the middle, somewhere, you're causing disease with almost every bite. I mean, it's the least nutritious food. And I like to let people look not just what they're doing today, but the road they're going down. Where does that road lead? You know, and the road of eating refined, fractured, low nutrition or no nutrition foods leads to some terrible places, basically heart disease, cancer, diabetes, none of which anybody particularly wants, and most of which everybody has. So, in an effort to control weight, a fantastic number of gimmicks have been tried. And it's very small efforts, short-term efforts, kind of like the dam is flooding, spilling over the top, and there's a tiny little crack somewhere down near the bottom, and there's some kid with his finger in the dam trying to, but it's still, but there's oceans pouring over the top. You know, I mean, it's really a stopgap measure that's not going to work. But it got into people's minds, and people started thinking about it, and they came up with the next thing, which is again a way to control weight, and that is don't eat really late and don't eat really early, and in between, sleep. Now you have a longer window of not eating, and this is supposed to magically impart health on people because they are intermittently fasting. Now, intermittently fasting has got to be the worst named concept I've ever run across. Because basically, all you have to do to intermittently fast is eat enough at lunch so that you're not hungry till dinner, and then eat enough at dinner so you're not hungry till lunch. All you have to do is eat satiating food, satiating meals. How do we satiate? Well, your mom told you when you were little how to satiate yourself. She said, Don't eat sweets in between meals. It'll spoil your appetite. We've learned this at every meal we've ever had, every restaurant we've ever gone to. You finish the meal, the waitress knows you're not satiated, the chef knows you're not satiated, and they go, "Would you like dessert?" Because they had moms too, and their moms taught them that eating sweets will satiate you. So you know, and I'm suggesting that we take that concept and blow it as big as it can possibly get and have sweets, sweet and juicy fruit for a meal. Make a meal of fruit completely like, wow, like baby yourself, nurture yourself, like, wow, pamper yourself. Have a whole meal of the food that's best for us. There's nothing better on planet Earth for us, while at the same time, it's the most satiating of all foods. Your mom told you when you were little, and nothing's changed. Every restaurant, every meal, you've always had dessert to satiate. So this all makes sense until we come to intermittent fasting. Why is it called intermittent fasting? Well, because in between the intermittent fasting is intermittent eating, which is okay. I don't know if I'm supposed to feel bad about the eating that comes in between the fasting, but I have studied enough fasting physiology to know what happens through every part of a fast. And what we call a fast today is not I stopped eating for 4 hours or I stopped eating for 16 hours. This is not a fast. A fast in today's world means a rest. I'm taking a rest. We know of we know of four kinds of rest. Better do it that way. We know of four kinds of rest. There's physical rest, physiologic rest, emotional rest, and sensory rest. Physical rest, when you're not doing stuff, you're taking physical rest. Sitting is more restful than running. Walking is more restful than running. Sitting is more restful than walking. Laying down is more restful than sitting. When you really want to rest at the end of the day, you lay down. There's not a lot of people stand up to sleep. You lay down to sleep because it's as physically resting as you can get. There's also something called sensory rest. Are you comfortable? If it's too hot or too cold, you don't have sensory rest. If there's all kinds of noises outside, construction or horns or who knows what, and you find the noise irritating, that's not sensory rest. If what you smell, smells like an airport bathroom, as opposed to somebody's rose garden, the rose garden's pretty restful, and the bathroom smells are not. So sensory rest. Are you looking at a pretty scene? When you look out your window, do you see across an open space? Is there water in the view? Human beings react really good when there's water in the view, even if it's just a water feature. Could be a fountain, for goodness sakes. But as long as there's water in the view, we find that this is why dentists' offices have fish tanks, because people respond well to seeing things, seeing water or things in water or through water. We like that feeling. We also don't like the claustrophobic jungle feeling. So we like to have a bit of an open view. If you have an open view and water, you've got something pretty spectacular going on as far as our sensory rest is concerned. Not too hot, not too cold, not too horrible. Do you see green or do you see cityscapes? Cityscapes don't make our blood pressure go down. but wooded scene, you can just look at pictures of cityscapes and your blood pressure goes up. Look at pictures of the woods and your blood pressure goes down. It's pretty amazing. We also have what's called emotional rest. And emotional rest is what you're supposed to get in the hospital and other places. But in the hospital, the nurse says, "Don't worry, honey, I'll take care of that for you. Would you like another blanket? Do you need a pillow?" Okay, maybe this is old time nursing and things have gotten a little more hectic, but in reality, nursing, this is a very giving profession where people put you at rest. The doctor says the same thing. He goes, "I'm here to help you. We'll take care of this. You're going to be all right. This procedure works out well every single time." Whatever it might be, you're going to be fine. Hearing all that is important in terms of emotional rest. Otherwise, you're worried. And if you're, so if you can participate in physical rest and sensory rest and emotional rest, you're getting well on board to getting into a state of rest that is so deep that it's deeper than any other state of rest known to man. How about that? That deep rest is magnified by physiologic rest. And physiologic rest means that we shut down the digestive tract, which takes most people 36 to about 72 hours. So if you don't eat, for most people, if specific conditions, it can take longer. There's even a few where it can take less, but for most people, 36 to 72 hours in order to shut down the digestive tract to the point where it's not finishing what it had already started. So to fast or to not eat for 12 or 16 or 18 hours in between meals cannot get you into that deep physiologic rest, which we think of as fasting. In fact, during those first 12 to 16 hours, your body is going through so many chemical changes as it starts to make the transition from a carbohydrate-based diet to a protein-based diet and then quickly into a fat-based diet, meaning where do the calories come from, that your body's actually working harder during that time period than it is a few days later when you get into the fast. Understanding that your digestive system's taking a full 30% of your calories for the day. So we have to shut that down. And that doesn't happen during intermittent fasting. So it's neither fasting, it's barely intermittent, it's not any of the things it proposes to be. So I'm talking about something else completely different. And I know we have a time thing going on. I'm not sure how we deal with that. Do we say goodbye and say hello again?
Yeah, we can say goodbye and say hello. So let's stop it here and then just sign back on. Cool.
All right, let's do that.